how we can make urban parks environmentally friendly. Urban parks are a big part of Australian suburb life. We take our dogs for walks there and kids can go play there. However, how often do you think about how much our urban park can support wildlife? Now think about your local park. It probably has a grassy oval and some gum trees, right? You may even see some birds like a magpie or a noisy miner. This is a common theme throughout all urban parks in Adelaide. A good way to measure how well an ecosystem is doing is to test the biodiversity of an area. This refers to how many different plant and animal species are present. And with our current parks, many of them do not have a high level of biodiversity, but the good news is that there are steps we can take to make our parks more environmentally friendly. When it comes to biodiversity, it's more important to have native animals than exotic animals, as these are the animals which naturally inhabit the landscape. Biodiversity isn't just good for nature though. Studies have shown that higher levels of biodiversity can benefit our mental health and well-being. This video will focus on species found in Adelaide, so if you're watching from another area, the plant and animal species may differ. So how can we make our parks more environmentally friendly? Firstly, let's look at birds. An important aspect when considering how we can help our urban bird species in our local parks is to think about the three different levels of vegetation. There's overstory, understory, and ground cover. Firstly, let's look at the overstory. This comprises of tall trees like red river gums, and these support hollow nesting birds like kookaburras. Whilst overstory trees are really common in urban parks, it's important that really old trees be protected for their habitat value, as they're becoming scarce. Next is the understory. Understory plants are pretty uncommon in urban parks, and is one of the reasons why we don't see many small birds there. So it's important that there are areas which have plants like kangaroo thorn. Understory plants are vital for small birds like the willy wagtail, who use its prickly nature for nesting. Finally, ground cover plants like kangaroo grass are essential for birds which are granivores, like the galah who feed on the seeds. Let's now look at how we can support insects in our parks. Many of our insects rely on native flowering plants for nectar. With most parks mainly consisting of grassy lawns, it means that these pollinators can't inhabit these areas as there's no food sources. Apart from nectar, some insects also eat the leaves of native plants. These plants are known as host plants. The meadow argus caterpillar, for example, will only eat fairy fan flowers and gardenia. If more host plants were planted in our parks, then it would allow for different types of butterflies to breed. This is an important opportunity as lots of the native butterflies' habitats have been lost. Next, let's look at lizards. We can support lizard populations of species such as the blue-tongued skink by having rocky areas for them to breed in, leaf litter for them to forage in, and hiding spots for them to keep away from predators. Let's also look at aquatic species. If ponds or streams are present, it's important that these areas stay free from pollution and that invasive plants like willows are managed. Additionally, if there are no water sources available, ponds can be constructed with provenance native plants, and frogs should come naturally to these areas. An important thing to keep in mind with all these animals is that their survival relies on a minimal chemical use, so pesticide and herbicide use should be kept to a minimum if they are needed at all. So whilst most of these changes heavily rely on council action, you may be wondering to yourself, what can you do to help nature in our parks? Firstly, you should try and keep your dogs on a leash at all times while walking through parks, especially in areas which have been rehabilitated with native vegetation. Secondly, if you live near an urban park, you should try and keep your cats indoors, as cats are predators to birds, insects, and lizards which live in parks. Finally, whenever you are in a park, you should always dispose your rubbish correctly. You could also pick up litter on a daily run, or join community days like Clean Up Australia Day. And hopefully, if action is taken to support the different types of animals which can be found in our urban parks, then they will become areas which will support biodiversity of many different types of species into the future.